Welcome back everybody to Forza Horizon 5, and today we're taking a look at the 2023 Ford Fiesta ST. So this is part of the 7th and unfortunately final generation of the Fiesta, which was produced between 2017 and 2023. Just like the Focus, it's been dropped for Ford prioritising the likes of SUVs. So yeah, hot hatchbacks or hatchbacks in general have just completely been dropped by so many manufacturers, and this is another one of those casualties. So this version of the car was unveiled also in 2017. However, this 2023 version had a facelift and power increase in 2022 as a final hurrah for the car. So yeah, the Fiesta has been dropped in most markets, although this ST apparently is still going to be around in Australia for a while because it is quite a popular car, and I can fully see why, because it looks good, it's practical, it's economical, it's got a fair decent amount of interior space, and it looks pretty nice on the interior as well, as you can see. Looks all very nice. And yeah, it's just the kind of car that you really aren't getting much of anymore. It's a very interactive car. You've got a 6-speed manual gearbox. You haven't got any hybrid systems going on in there, and yeah, but at the end of the day you can still carry a family of 4 alongside you as the driver, while having plenty of boot space on top of it. But then you've also got plenty of performance, as emphasised by the twin exhausts, the altered bodywork on the rear end there and at the front, and emphasised by the fact that it's got the most powerful engine you can get in a Fiesta from this generation. So it's got a 1.5 litre turbocharged inline 3, producing 197 horsepower and 236 pounds-feet of torque. Now that torque is up from 214 in the pre-2022 version, so if you want the most powerful version of this car, then go for one after 2022. But the remarkable thing is that the engine, despite having one less cylinder and 100 cc's less than the previous generation ST, still has the same amount of power, but also more in the way of torque. So yeah, you can definitely tell that Ford have put a great deal of thought and engineering into making a car that has an economical engine, but still has the performance on the go at the same time. And this has that in spades. As yes, it's not as quick as the Focus ST, but for a car that's got under 200 horsepower, it's still fairly rapid for a car of this type, which is helped by the fact that it only weighs 2,657 pounds. So not a lot of weight to lug around when you consider the amount of power that it's got going on as well. You've also got numerous parts that you can swap into this car as well when it comes to the bodywork. So you can put those bumpers on, or you can put your normal Forza bumpers on the front there. Comes to the side. Where are we? There we go. So you can also put a double spoiler on this, if you so wish. And then you can put the normal Forza one on as well. And then for bumpers, we've got 3 different designs to choose from here, so that kind of cleans up the look of the rear. I actually prefer that look to the standard one. And you got that, which is even cleaner, and then that is a little bit more fussy but still pretty clean. To be honest, I prefer either of the first two over the standard one, if I'm honest. That one's the closest to the original without having the extra bit of green bit on the bottom there, if you sort of wish to have the exhaust in the same place. And yeah, we've also, I believe, got side skirts. Yep. So just a little bit of extra black plastic on there, and then different kind of skirts there as well. So nothing radical in terms of the skirts there, but still it's nice to see that there's plenty of different parts that you can choose from to make your car a little bit more individual. But nonetheless, let's get out onto the open road and see what this car can do. Right, so here we are at the drag strip, so let's see what this car can do before we hit the speed camera, and then we'll get it around the track. So yeah, front wheel drive, but having a 6-speed manual and a fair decent amount of torque means that this car still gets off the line rather nicely. Also revs quite high for obviously a turbocharged car that only has 3 cylinders. But yeah, it's got a really good power band to it, and the torque is noticeable. As you can see, nearly 111 miles an hour there, which is fairly rapid. So yeah, it's by no means, you know, as, you know, fast as likes of a Focus. You can break up hot hatchbacks into 3 different categories basically: sub 200 horsepower, sub 300 horsepower, but between 200 and 300, which is where the Focus is, and then your plus 300 horsepower cars, which are yeah, more like super hot hatchbacks. Whereas this is a yeah, more of a you know, a lower level hot hatchback, and then your Focus STs, which are more your standard kind of hot hatchback in terms of just pure power and a lot of speed and acceleration on the go. Whereas this is your yeah, a lot more on the lower side of things in terms of acceleration and speed, but it's still no less fun to drive. In terms of class, we're on low end B class, whereas the Focus ST was low end A class, so there's quite a margin there. But on the whole, the handling and the braking isn't drastically different. There's only 0.2 in it in terms of handling, and I think about 0.4, 0.5 in it in terms of braking. So not a massive difference there, but obviously the big difference is in terms of acceleration and speed, because at the end of the day we have like 80 horsepower or so less, so that is where the big difference is. But at the end of the day we do way less on top of all of that, so, you know, swings and roundabouts to be honest. But overall the stats are fairly solid, nothing spectacular, but, you know, the handling and the speed are fairly good, and the launch for a car of this amount of torque, while not weighing all that much and still being front wheel drive, is fairly good. But you would need probably a fair decent amount of practice to get a bang on launch with this car, because at the end of the day there is a lot of torque there for the car to deal with. Now you could get a limited slip differential with this car, but I'm not sure whether or not that's on this vehicle, because it was an option at the end of the day, it was not standard. So yeah, but if you can get one that has it, then you'll certainly have a better drive. Nonetheless, so let's hear what this car sounds like, and then we'll talk about it some more. So the engine, low end revs sounds a little bit grumbly to be honest. It's not the nicest sounding of engines, but despite the amount of, you know, power and the, you know, the lack of cubic capacity and cylinders, it's not an overly turbocharging sounding noise coming from the engine either. Especially at the high end, it sounds pretty good when you're getting up to about 6,000 RPM. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the way the engine sounds, but overall it is decent, and yeah, the more you rev it, the more you're going to get out of it in terms of enjoyment. So there is that. And yeah, acceleration is overall fairly good as well. 0 to 16, 6.316 seconds. 0 to 115.717 seconds. And it'll go to a top speed of 146 miles an hour. Which again, for a sub 200 horsepower car is really, really nice. Especially for what is obviously a modern car that has, you know, plenty of safety features and, you know, creature comforts and interior space. But yeah, they've been able to keep the performance while also obviously improving the economy and keeping it a properly safe and practical car all on top of that as well. Handling wise, pretty much perfect to be honest. There's very little in the way of understeer, and yeah, there's no real lift off oversteer either. Braking could be a little bit better. It does get a bit squirrely at times, I feel, when you're properly hard on the brakes, but for the most part they are good. They're the only side of this car that I would improve. But, you know, they need to be usable on a day-to-day basis as well as on a track, and yeah, there's no good having brakes that can pretty much break your neck when you slam on. So yeah, they are a perfect compromise on the whole, but yeah, when it comes to the track, they're not the best part of the car by any means. But still, overall, a pretty damn good car. As good as a hot hatchback could probably be, to be honest, in this kind of climate. And yeah, it's just a real shame that they've canned it along with the Focus. If I'm honest, it's it's a great shame, because like with the Focus, this has been an icon of British roads for many decades, and yeah, for it to be fall by the wayside due to SUVs is just a massive shame. It feels like going in the wrong direction when you consider all sorts of other things, quite frankly. So yeah, but you can get this for only 20 points in the current festival playlist. It's well worth getting, especially if you're into your more ordinary, everyday kind of cars. Obviously this is a top-of-the-line version of an ordinary car, but it is still an ordinary car that you'd see more likely on the open roads on a day-to-day basis than your Lamborghinis or Ferraris, for instance. So yeah, get out there and get it if you haven't already. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it if you have already driven it. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.